You make kind of a provocative comment in your new book here, Mugged, and I think it's on page 151. You write that various groups, feminists, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience. Yes. What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children, and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
See, this is essentially the problem, and the Republicans
What have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country.
But you see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants of immigrants, and we understand that not everybody, there are Native Americans in, but we understand in this country, that kind of self-deportation, making things so difficult for immigrants, for undocumented immigrants, that they have to leave, or the DREAM Act, threatening to veto the DREAM Act, which is what Romney has said. I mean, and again, we have Governor Romney, who is basically taking a position that is anti a large and the fastest growing segment of the electorate.
And here's the thing, if Republicans don't do something with immigration, and if Republicans are so far away from Latinos, they're going to lose not only this election, they might lose the White House for generations.
The future.
And Texas could turn
That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics, because they're a larger group of Hispanics now. But could I just say to Jorge, I hate to disagree with you when you're attacking President Obama, but I think the point on immigration is you can have open borders or you can have a welfare state. You cannot have both.
An illustration tonight about just how far left some Democratic presidential candidates seem willing to go to get the nomination. At least 3 of them are now supporting a position Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama would not take: reparations for African Americans. With that, let's bring in our panel: Democratic strategist Zach Friend, the president and co-founder of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan, and a senior columnist at townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter. Gentlemen, great to have you.
Good to be here.
Zach, I'm going to play this sound from Senator Kamala Harris, and I'll ask you to react to it.
So when we're talking about recognizing the inequalities, the inequities, it's not about saying I'm trying to take from those who have achieved success if they've played by the rules and worked hard. Good for you, keep it. But I am saying we need to be honest and address that not everyone has an equal opportunity to access to success, and we've got to address that.
So, Zach, is $1 trillion or more to the African-American community the way to go?
Well, I think a couple things on this. I happen to know Senator Harris personally, and she definitely is a social justice person, and I'm not surprised that this is a position that she's taking. But I think that overall, issues like this are going to continue to come up in a Democratic primary when you don't have a clear front runner.
Right.
And these kinds of issues, I mean, similar in 2016 when you had 17 Republicans running, one of the ways that the now President Trump really differentiated himself was by taking, I think, what a lot of the Republican establishment would have said were pretty controversial stands on immigration. So, too, I think in the Democratic primary, you're going to have some stances that maybe don't jive with a lot of the general election voters in the Democratic base. And so I think that there's going to be some stuff coming up over the next month or 2 months that will be having the same conversation.
Well, Senator Harris is not alone. Take a listen to Senator Elizabeth Warren tonight in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Ugly history of racism. We need to confront it head on, and we need to talk about the right way to address it and make change.
Tom, is there a fear of being seen as a moderate if you're not all in on these liberal ideas?
Well, certainly that's where the energy is on the Democratic side is pulling everybody leftward. I mean, but this is an issue that is terribly unpopular in the mainstream of the country, and this is one that's going to be hard for Democrats who go on record supporting something like this to come back in a general election and sort of a position they're going to climb down from. And I always take these issues and look at them. This election is going to boil down to about 7 states. All the rest are already pretty much decided. And you're talking about, so how do all these various issues, including this one, play in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida? I mean, that's where it's going to matter. And it's not a popular position. So I think this is a real problem for Democrats.
The National Review, seeing politics here, writing, quote, the proposals are not intended to mitigate evil. They're intended to make Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris or Kirsten Gillibrand president of the United States. Kurt, your reaction?
Oh, well, look, I couldn't support this more. I'm a conservative. I want the Republican to win. And Tom's absolutely right. This kind of moral idiocy is poison in the swing states. I mean, I want to see these guys go into Ohio saying, hey, guys, everybody, reparations. That's the real issue. Not the economy, not getting your kids out of endless wars, reparations. But, Mike, I'm still puzzled. How does this work? My beautiful wife escaped from the Democrats' favorite communist hellhole, Cuba. How much does she owe? And my great-great-grandfather, he fought with the Union Army. Do I get a discount? How does this work? It's stupid. It's immoral. And I want the Democrats to keep doing it and self-destruct.
Zach, all indications are this is going to be a really crowded field, which we expect to maybe up to 25 or so candidates. Is the critical thing to make sure a chunk of the left base is fired up about you?
Well, we have an exceptionally fired up base. If you think about the 2018 midterm elections, it was clear that there were a lot of new voters turning out. However, the reason the Democrats won the House were actually in some of these suburban swing districts that actually do not have the same type of fired up base that some of these other districts had. So I agree with Tom in the sense that you're going to have to find a way to parse that difference, to actually win through the industrial Midwest. Ultimately, in 2020, the election still will be won in the states that are always the swing states over the last 20 years.
Tom, what do Vice President Biden and Senator Sherrod Brown, the folks who could play well with those white working class voters, do? Do they jump on the repatriations or reparations bandwagon, or do they stay out of it?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, I think Sherrod Brown has been sort of cautious in some of these positions, Medicare for all, et cetera. And he talks about it in terms of, you know, he wants to be practical and get things that, and Amy Klobuchar says the same thing. She doesn't want pie in the sky. She wants things that can actually be achieved in the short term. Certainly reparations is not one of those things. So, you know, the Democrats are in a dilemma here because privately you will hear Democrats say we need a white male to win the 2020 election. Publicly, though, they're not saying that. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. People are looking toward, you know, females, persons of color. Those are sort of the cachet for Democrats who are running in this primary election. So it's a real dilemma for Democrats, I think, come the general election.
Kurt, how alarmed do you think some of these white male potential candidates are at this point? You heard Bernie Sanders complain about it, but you have maybe Joe Biden, Senator Sherrod Brown. Should they be alarmed that this may not be the year for a Democrat white male?
I think they should, because the Democrat Party is completely obsessed with race. Now, I want it to be because I want them to lose. And here's the dirty little secret about Republicans. You get us a conservative, we'll happily vote for a differently abled lesbian Hindu of color if that person is going to support a strong military, a strong economy, the First, Second, and even Third Amendments. We're looking for values. They're looking for a check in the box. And that's why they're going to lose next year.
Gentlemen, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The most recent poll I could find on it, I think it was about 2 or 3 years old. It showed 2/3 of Americans opposed that idea. There, you put it up on the screen. 68% were against reparations payments. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about what it is you would do as president when it came to that, and if you are worried that sends a message to that 68% of Americans who say they're against it, that maybe you are out of the mainstream a little.
Well, this is not something that I think of through a political lens. I have long believed that this country should resolve its original sin of slavery, and that one of the ways we should consider doing that is through reparations for people who are the descendants of slaves. It is interesting to me that under our Constitution and otherwise, that we compensate people if we take their property. Shouldn't we compensate people if they were property sanctioned by the state? So I believe that is a conversation that's worth having. And I see that as right and wrong. I don't see that as political or non-political. If I'm president, what I said was that I would establish a task force to look at how that might be done. I know that there's a lot of disagreement, both about whether it should be done and if it were done, how it would be done. I'm not naive about that. But I do think that dark cloud still hangs over our country. I believe that we ought to move forward in the 21st century as one nation with one destiny, and that until that issue is resolved, until that original sin is addressed, we may think that we're moving forward as one nation, and I don't think that we ever really will.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Repatriation. Repatriation. To restore a person or thing to its place of origin. Repatriation is the restoration of a person or thing to its place or state of origin. Repatriation is often used to describe the transport of a person in that person's native state. Repatriation may also be used to describe the return of art or culturally significant objects from a state in which they are housed to their state of origin. The Federal Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act requires the repatriation to contemporary Indian tribes or nations of artifacts significant to the tribe's culture or religion, or human remains taken from the gravesite associated with the tribe or nation and now housed in a federal agency or museum. Repatriation. Reparations. Reparations. Reparation, a remedy for a harm, especially as a means of reconciliation. Reparation is a generic term for a remedy for a harm. Reparation is often used as a term in lieu of damages to denote monetary relief that is not the result of the usual system of fault designation in litigation. For instance, states with the no-fault insurance laws may use reparation to designate a payment made for a covered injury or damage. Some administrative awards of payment from one party to another are reparation orders. Reparations are used especially to denote any actions or payments intended as redress for an injury and as a means of reconciliation between a party or group that was injured and the party or group who injured them. Reparations are sometimes payments of money or transfer of supplies given by the state that initiated armed hostility against another state, though these are usually a requirement of a peace treaty or surrender and are rarely a voluntary admission of responsibility by the state that makes them. Reparations are sometimes made to a group that has been mistreated as a matter of government policies, as in the payment authorized by the United States government as reparations to American citizens of Japanese descent who were interned during World War II. Hey, how's y'all doing? This is Mr. Blows Your Mind, and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Again, this is Black Minds News, which is also Black Minds TV. Again, I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind, and this channel is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, articulate, relay, unveil, decode, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created the greatest land, who they call the United States, and we and us, we give honor to our ancestors. And this channel, again, my motto is, I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. All right. And so this video today is in reference to the hashtag ADOS for those who may not have known where to go to get the information. I took it upon myself to go to the website and read what the agenda is, as well as what it's about. Now, for those who after seeing this, if you want more information as to it, you can go to, I think it's ADOS101, right, .com, and you'll see the web page for itself. And this here is what it states, just to give you some up to what is being stated. Now, the thing is, the reason why I'm doing it is to, push more information, because there's a lot of conversation out there about it. And so the best way is to get it from those who created it, which is Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. And so, and there's others as well who are actually supporters and researchers that are part of that as well. And so consider myself to be part of the black media, it would be incumbent on myself if I didn't. And this morning, the Spirit told me to do this again, so that there would be more information related to it. And again, there's for those who are on my particular channel who are accustomed to me reading, so I provided this for you. So again, this is Black Minds TV, which is also a channel that you can go, and those who might be passive buyers, you could go there and subscribe. It's a new channel that I'm trying to get up, because again, this particular channel is the most suppressed channel in the black corner of the internet, because I am the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. And so for those who pass it by, you can go again. I always have a grand opening. You can go down the aisle, see something you like, hit that like button, hit the dislike button. If I can have a supervisor, somebody come out, and we can work something out, maybe get a discount to get you to return. Next time you come back, see something you might like, and get a like and subscribers and all that good stuff. So again, sit back for a quick second. This one is just a short video as to give you the information as to what's out there about ADOS, so that those who did not know, you're hearing it from what is being said on the website page, and you can get more information by going and clicking on it. Again, that is ADOS101.com. About ADOS. Hashtag ADOS was started by the brain trust of Howard graduate and host of the Breaking Brown political show, Yvette Carnell, and UCLA alumnus and attorney, Antonio Moore, who hosts the weekly radio show Tone Talks. ADOS, which stands for American Descendant of Slavery, seeks to reclaim, restore the critical national character of the African American identity and experience, one grounded in our group's unique lineage, and which is central to our continuing struggle for social and economic justice in the United States. In his book, American Slavery, American Freedom, the historian Edmund Morgan concludes that slavery was not a contradiction of American freedom, but rather that slavery was the institution that made white freedom possible. In other words, slavery was not a mistake so much as a precondition for societal hierarchy, which requires descendants of slaves to remain a bottom caste and be made to suffer the necessary failures of a brutal economic system. This was followed by a Jim Crow era that was hashtag ADOS becomes actual contagions that leads to a destruction of wealth through federal supported discriminatory practices like redlining, black present literally made wealth disappear in communities. All while American whites, and more recently immigrants, enjoy advantage in a land of apparently equal opportunity that was in fact manufactured on the back of black failure. According to Yale historian David Blight, by 1860 there were more millionaires, slaveholder all, living in lower Mississippi Valley than anywhere else in the United States. In the same year, the nearly 4 million American slaves were now some 3.5 billion, making them the largest single financial asset in the entire United States economy, worth more than all manufacturing and railroads combined. Codified by government and exploited by private actors, the creation of an hashtag ADOS underclass served as the financial engine of a nation that never recognized the debt it owed to the group as a result. As such, the hashtag ADOS movement is underpinned by the demand for reparative justice in making the group whole and as a necessary component in fulfilling the promise of opportunity from which, by design, ADOS has been historically excluded and denied. The truth of ADOS life is seen nowhere more clearly than the racial wealth gap in this country. Closing the racial wealth gap requires a new deal for Black America. President Trump's assertion during the 2016 presidential campaign that Black Americans have nothing to lose was met with defiance by those on the left, but the data supports the statement. From over all wealth levels to home ownership to student debt levels and beyond, African Americans across this nation are suffering. According to a study from Brookings, half of Black Americans who are born poor stay poor. Most Black kids who are born in middle-class families are downwardly mobile. And as Duke University economist Dr. William Sandy Darity and co-founder of the ADOS movement, Antonio Moore, along with other researchers, observed in their study what we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. The concentration of ADOS at the bottom of the economically is a consequence of lack of wealth transfers and multi-generational oppression, not individual agencies or cultural patterns. Hashtag ADOS, hashtag American DOS sets out to shift the dialogue around the identity of what is to be African American in an effort to move the discussion from melanin and properly center the discussion around lineage. Black Agenda. As a specific group with a specific justice claim, the hashtag ADOS movement demands a specific agenda with policies, prescriptions that address the losses stemming from the institution of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, convict leasing, mass incarceration, and immigration. We demand a new deal for Black America which includes, but is not limited to. We need to set aside for American descendants of slavery, not minorities, a throwaway category which includes all groups except white men. That categorization has allowed Democrats to use programs like affirmative action as giveaways to all groups in exchange for votes. The bribery must end. That begins with a new designation on the census with ADOS and another for Black immigrants. Black immigrants should be barred from assessing affirmative action and other set-asides intended for ADOS. as should Asians, Latinos, white women, and other minority groups. In addition, ADOS hiring and employment data must be demanded for all businesses receiving tax credits, incentives, and governmental support, as well as all governmental agencies, national, state, and local. It is our belief that this will show that there are minimum, if any, ADOS professionals in fields including but not limited to engineering, medical, legal, and tech. Once affirmative action is streamlined as a government program only, and specifically for ADOS, the program should be fully reinstituted. The Supreme Court decided wrongly when it gutted the Voting Rights Act. As the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article, "It's time to solve the mystery of the 100,000 mystery votes," indicates the protection outlined in the Voting Rights Acts are essential to protecting the rights of ADOS in America. Reinstituting the protections of the Voting Rights Act is a key part of our agenda. Black businesses only receive 1.7% of the $23.09 billion in total of SBA loans under President Obama's SBA, which is Small Business Administration, after having previously received 8.2% under President George W. Bush. Succeeding as an entrepreneur requires capital, so our agenda demands that 15% of SBA loans be distributed to ADOS businesses. We seek a multi-billion-dollar infrastructural plan targeted to ADOS communities, including but not limited to the Black Belt, Flint, Michigan. A Reuters examination published in 2016 found 3,000 cities with poisoning rates higher than Flint. Residents of majority ADOS areas that have been poisoned under the federal, local, and state government's watch, such as not only Flint, Michigan, but Denmark, South Carolina, and others, must be financially compensated for the benign neglect of the Environmental Protection Agency and the government in general. The Justice Department must also institute protection, which exacts heavy fines and federal criminal prosecution for further offenders. Mass incarceration has wreaked havoc on Black American families. By some accounts, there are literally more Black males in prison than all women are incarcerated on the planet. To give context, there are 20 million Black males, and they are largely descended from slavery, while there are 4 billion women globally, both groups producing the same number of incarcerated. The reinvention of slavery through use of the 13th Amendment is chronicled by Douglas Blackman in his PBS documentary, Slavery by Another Name. It is our position this must be corrected. We demand an immediate assessment of the number of the hashtag ADOS prison population at the state and federal level. We also demand that there be reviewed if punishment, bail amounts, sentence lengths, amounts of time served before parole is being levied at unfairly high levels on hashtag ADOS, based on gender and race for similar crimes to other groups. We demand that there be real prison reform in the form of investments into counseling, job training, and rehabilitation for our incarcerated. Former President Ronald Reagan committed to strengthening the capacity of historically Black colleges and universities to provide quality education. In Executive Order 12320, President Obama undermined that commitment with changes to PLUS loan requirements. We call for legislation to triple the current federal allotment to the HBCUs. Schools like Georgetown, built by slaves, have an endowment of over $1 billion. This is a transfer of wealth from ADOS to whites. Our agenda demands that the federal government fully endow our remaining HBCUs in a dollar amount that meets the budgetary needs of each institution. In addition, ADOS students who attend HBCUs should receive a discount in the form of a 75% tax credit, given that our inability to pay the rising cost of education is directly tied to the racial wealth gap coming from slavery. ADS who choose schools outside of the HBCUs networks should receive a 50% government-funded credit. Findings published in the United States Today concluded that top university graduates ADOS in tech, but those graduates can't find jobs in Silicon Valley. Only 2% of technology workers are 7 Silicon Valley companies are black. According to the report, and many of those are black immigrants, not ADOS. And according to a study by Rutgers professor Hal Salzman, American colleges graduates more tech workers than tech companies needed. Hence, the H-1B program reduced opportunities for ADOS searching for careers in technology. The government must strictly limit the number of H-1B visa worker tech companies that flow each year. Audit the banks to see if there are patterns of racial discrimination in lending, and require these banks to extend loans to ADOS businesses. These banks receive bailouts from taxpayers and owe a debt to all taxpayers regardless of race. In addition, banks such as Wells Fargo use predatory schemes historically, not just during the Great Recession, to eviscerate black wealth. Lending to black businesses and institutions would be a beginning for banks to redress the harm they caused to the ADOS communities. Mandate that the government's advertising budget include black media. There is no ADOS community without our own media. Incentives through legislative action that all major companies spend 10% of their advertising budget with ADOS media in exchange for tax credits. In addition, mandates that 10% of government advertising for governmental agencies, armed forces, and other auxiliary programs to go majority ADOS-owned media companies. ADOS college debt should be forgiven in the same way losses were forgiven for the banks on Wall Street. Those executives oversaw the evaporation of billions in global wealth. ADS graduates bought into the idea that the key to success in life was an education, and there was a place for us in America, only to find out after graduation that we were locked out. We can't afford to bear the burden of a lie. A healthcare credit to pay for the medical coverage for all ADOS. This would cover surgery, pharmaceutical, and counseling needs. As an example, we must like to see a lineage therapy whereby #ADOS leadership, in cooperation with licensed therapists and psychiatrists, develop a therapy curriculum to help members of the ADOS understand and manage their ancestral traumas. This therapy should come at no cost to the ADOS community. America has never atoned for its original sin of slavery in the form of reparations. It is our position that H.R. 40 be passed and additional supportive measures implemented. We need to gather the data on the level of wealth that was lost as a direct result of slavery and the era of Jim Crow that followed. In the paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century, economist Sandy Darity of Duke University assessed the value today as the following. If we also take as a conservative estimate that the total number of ex-slaves who had attained emancipation at the close of the Civil War as 4 million persons, 40 million acres of land valued at $400 million should have been distributed to the ex-slaves in 1865. The present value of that sum of money compounded from 1865 at a 6%, 5% for interest earned, and 1% as an inflation adjustment would amount to more than $1.3 trillion. As there are approximately 30 million descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States today, the estimated base on 40 acres yield an allocation of slightly more than $400,000 per recipient. Hashtag ADOS demands that there be a real review of direct payouts needed to be made to eligible recipients from gathered DNA data, and progress be made towards making hashtag ADOS families whole. Without these measures being instituted, ADOS are locked out of the country our ancestors built during chattel slavery. Without reform through transformative government, we will be left out to continue living a third world life in a first world country.